Chapter 11:14. There was a bright moon above the sea. The word life was really wonderful and left a lingering aftertaste. Even if a sword immortal used the method of mental travel, no matter how fast his sword was, he would definitely not be able to compare to the 3 mountains talisman that could cross continents easily. He would also not be able to compare to the night boat. An ethereal Dharma idol swept across the thousands of islands in the sea. Above the sea, the majestic sword Chi broke through countless clouds, and the green shadow opened up extremely long paths in the clouds. Occasionally, there would be people of the sea who would look up in shock, only to see the green sword light flash and disappear. After a while, a series of deafening thunder resounded between the lonely sea and sky. Chapter 11:15. In the thatched cottage on the sword prayer platform, there was a row of small bamboo chairs under the eaves. Among them was a young girl wearing a mink hat. Ever since Old Death started cultivating at the sword prayer platform, it had become much more lively. Of course, it could also be because Bai Xian had returned to the mountain from the lower sect. Once Bai Xian returned, Chen Lingjun would often come here to chat. In addition, when Old Death entered the mountain, he was given an important task by Mountain Lord Chen. He had to frequently interact with Xiego, and Xiego was dragged by the white-haired boy to worship Guizhu Jiao and become the alliance leader. The quiet sword prayer platform had become a place for people to exchange information. Today, a large group of people crowded here, and the bamboo chairs and benches were almost not enough. The strange thing was that today, they were given a slice of sweet watermelon. They left it in the mountain stream for a few hours. Xiaomi squatted by the stream and stared at it. Then, they brought it to the old chef. Zhu Lian smiled and asked where it came from. It was not the right time to eat it. Xiaomi laughed and said that Mountain Lord Good Samaritan had gone out to sea and stolen it from an island where a small sect was located. He had a big watermelon under each arm and ran away after stealing it. It was probably an ordinary item over there. No one noticed the whereabouts of Mountain Lord Good Samaritan. At that time, Julien nodded and said that it was very good. Chapter 11:16. Time and Rain, each holding an umbrella, chatted endlessly, laughing and chatting. Julien took a break from his busy schedule and came to the archway of the mountain gate to congratulate Old Immortal Jia. Old Immortal Jia often came to the foot of the mountain to talk to the hard-working Immortal Guard Taoist. They were close friends and called each other brothers. It was normal to be close friends for a long time. Old Chef and Old Immortal Jia were not such people. It was a great friendship that had been accumulated year after year. It was the type of friendship that was slowly simmered over a slow fire, and one's true feelings could be seen over a small drink. Now, Luopa Mountain had 2 cross-continent ferries. One was the Wind Kite Ferry that Mountain Lord Chen bought from the Central Plains Xianmi dynasty. The other was the brand new Thunder Chariot that he bought from Tongyi Continent's Yao clan. He became the second steward of the Wind Kite Ferry. Chapter 11:17. The bamboo hut was separated from the corridor by a wall. It was a completely different world. The inside of the hut was like a vast and boundless great void realm. Chun Pingon sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. In front of him was a badly damaged bright red robe and 2 broken swords. This was the price that Chun Pingon had to pay in the battle of life and death with Ma Kuxuan. On the robe that Chen Pingon had shed his celestial body when he ascended to the immortal realm, there were many seal scripts of different colors and shades. They were restless, as if they wanted to break out of their cage. These were the true names of the great demons that had been sewn onto Chen Pingon's robe by the tailor in the prison years ago. Woven together, they were like duckweed with roots, gently swaying with the water. Chapter 11:18. Xiego asked tentatively, "Shall I invite the Hill Master here?" The old Abidine said, "I don't have that much influence." Xiego complained, "We are all family." "Don't say that. You can't." In Luopa Mountain, Xiego had learned a lot from Xiaomi. The old Abidine said, "Closed-door training is a serious matter. It's not a trifling matter." Chapter 11:19. Sorry for the late update. Chun Pingon still chose to carve the bottom script. Nothing is impossible when the spirit is there, and the side script, 3,000 words. I like to carve more words which are more challenging. The old Abbey Dean seemed to have expected this choice. He asked casually, "You are really in seclusion. Where did you go with your 3 spirits?" Chun Pingon answered, "With the help of your 6 talisman, I went to the Rain Dragon sect, the Cheonglin sect of the North Continent, and the Great Blasphemy sect of the Tong Yi Continent." The old Abbey Dean laughed. "Now that you have reached a higher level, you are finally going to settle old scores with others? Or is it that now that your Taoist companion has reached the 14th level, you are full of confidence now? If so, it is no wonder that you have a good chat with Pavilion Master Lu. For the people on the same path." Chapter 11:20. The sun sets, and the river turns black. The moon rises, and the mountains turn white. Everything was silent except for the occasional crackling of the bonfire in the main hall. They look at the travel-worn man outside the hall. He looks like he is in his 30s. Probably because he has read a few books, he is very calm and composed. Qing Rang does not speak. The fairy algae is silent. Seeing the fairy algae look like she has seen a ghost, Qing Rang, who is still a little uncertain, immediately knows. At this moment, this scene is like its clay idol in a temple eating incense in front of them. Chapter 11:21. Under a tree with countless flowers and fruits, a young man with a crown and a burly old Taoist were sitting and chatting. The shade of the tree was like water. Initially, there was nothing under the tree. As one of Chun Pingon's incarnations, the one wearing the Taoist crown, a stone table and 2 stone stools appeared. There was a chessboard engraved on the table. It was an imitation of the pine chessboard that Xiaolonqiu had played in the ancestral mountain. This was what it meant to be the master of the house. He could do whatever he wanted and create everything. The old Abbey Dean raised his hand, and 2 boxes of chess pieces appeared on the table. They were not black and white, but 5 colors mixed together. Chun Pingon glanced at them and could not tell if they were real or fake. The old Abbey Dean asked casually, "Do you know where Lu Qi is?" Chun Pingon shook his head. Literary luck was a big category of human harmony. Bai Yu was a poet in the heart of the Tao. After Su Zi and Lu Qi made way for him, there were many people who insisted on their own views. But no matter what, people were still used to seeing poems as poems. Even if Su Zi was bold and Lu Qi was sentimental, they were still inferior to Bai Yi. Chapter 11:22. Chun Pingon prepared to go to the capital of the Cloud Rock country to take a look. He first sent a flying sword message to Zhong Qiu, roughly explaining the process and results of finding Qing Rang and the others. He asked Zhong Qiu to pass on the message to the temporarily established ancestral hall, saying that the great sword immortal me had personally taken action. Unfortunately, he only caught 2 accomplices and let them escape. The main character's talisman was a cultivator. However, this wild demon was definitely powerless to stir up trouble. The desecration of the dozens of countries along the coast could be resumed without worry. The fierce-looking man whose face was as white as a sheet of paper and his lover were thinking about something. After some discussion, they hurriedly left the desolate temple and found Chun Pingon at the foot of the mountain. They said that they, husband and wife, were willing to be at Master Xian's beck and call as servants. Chun Pingon couldn't help but laugh, saying that he was used to traveling alone and didn't like others to serve him. They had found the wrong person and might as well find someone else to rely on. Perhaps it was because they saw that this immortal master, who had turned the 3 demonic cultivators into ashes while talking and laughing, was quite amiable. They became even more determined and kowtowed on the mountain road. One of them howled and the other wept, recounting the hardships and sufferings of the past few years. However, when they raised their heads, there was no trace of the scholar. They still didn't give up. Finally, at the first glimmer of dawn, they saw the immortal master, who was borrowing a stove to cook in a deserted relay station. The man was called Fan Tong, and the female ghost was called Xie Sanyang. They asked the immortal master if he despised their lowly origins. In the past, Chun Pingon didn't say anything. He just treated them to a simple breakfast. Xie Sanyang was a good judge of character. She was diligent and helped to clean up the table. Chun Pingon didn't stop her. He joked, "Don't you guys know? Who would dare to bring you guys along? Who wouldn't think that we're evil bandits when they see us?" The woman was self-aware. She smiled beautifully, while the man scratched his head in worry. But, to be honest, that was indeed the reason. However, he was born with this physiognomy. Ever since he was a child, even the teachers did not dare to hit his palm. Chun Pingon asked them a question. If he had killed them in the temple earlier, who would they blame? The woman spoke in a more bureaucratic manner, but the man was more honest. There didn't seem to be a definite answer. Next, the immortal master only asked them about the current situation at the foot of the mountain in the surrounding countries. The two of them naturally told them everything they knew. Before leaving, Chun Pingon said that he wanted to go to Yunhua. Chapter 11:23. On the road of life, two neighboring mountains had the same bright moon night. At the entrance of a village, they talked about the rise and fall of the world. The Prime Minister was on night duty, eating oily cakes. Scholars like to draw pictures of fishermen fishing in snowy days. Who cared if the fisherman was cold and shivering like a quail? Xiego sighed with emotion for no reason. Mountain Master, to be honest, I occasionally envy those who practice martial arts. Chun Pingon smiled and said, "Why do you say that?" Xiego stretched out his hand and pointed at the only martial artist on the neighboring mountain peak. Unlike those cultivators who were either doing breathing exercises or chatting idly, he was dozing off. From time to time, he would open his eyes and look around quickly. It was obvious that he was walking inside and outside. Chapter 11:24. Previously, Chao Xi had brought her two new disciples to the Great Duan dynasty through the palm print ferry. Along the way, they entered the high cloud commandery. When the ferry docked at the shore, Chao Xi got off the ferry in advance and brought them to tour the mountains and rivers. Do Shi was the sky of this ancient commandery. Coincidentally, the two Shiji were here. Chao Xi wanted the two disciples to get to know the elders of the same sect. Old Master Do was going to celebrate his 90th birthday. Chao Xi calculated the time. She still had some spare time and wanted to let Jijie and Baiyu slowly train their bodies on this journey. Previously on the ferry, Chao Xi had been recognized. Even though Chao Xi had closed the door and declined visitors, not to mention those who knocked on the door to visit, just those who walked in the corridor outside to watch the show were endless. Chao Xi was really annoyed. He didn't care, but the two disciples had long been unsettled. In a few days, they had an unavoidable sense of alienation from him, their master, no longer the state of mind they had when they had just met. They were no longer the same. When they first boarded the boat, their thoughts were simple and lively. They practiced whatever Chao Xi taught them. Their fist essences became purer and lighter. It was a good sign. When they roughly knew the weight of the name Chao Xi, their fist essences started to stagnate. The same stance and fist moves, after learning and practicing, became incomparably heavy. It was as if each punch was pressuring the weight of Master Chao Xi. The two children became more and more silent and reserved. Now, their expressions and gazes when they looked at Master Chao Xi changed. They feared him as if they had seen a ghost. They respected him as if they had met a god. Since things had reached this point, Chao Xi decided to make things clear that he should have said when they arrived at Duan Jingjing. Since they had become his disciples, they had to know something sooner or later. Therefore, Chao Xi didn't purposely exaggerate, nor was he willing to purposely hide it. Chapter 11:25. Heaven and earth were like a pair of eternal lovers. If one were to look at it upside down, the Milky Way would be dazzling. The mountains and rivers were like caissons. With a flash of sword light, Chun Pingon reached out to catch the messenger flying sword. After reading the content, he smiled. You came at the right time. Second Seat Xia understood his mountain chieftain well. Did you pick up some money? Chun Pingon passed the letter to Xiego and nodded with a smile. You can say that. Good things come in pairs. It turned out that there was finally a piece of good news from the ancestral master hall that was temporarily set up in the Cloud Rock Nation. After painstakingly excavating the Great Desecration Mountain, various forces moved mountains and water along the way. In the past few days, a small vassal state of the Yu dynasty unintentionally discovered the ruins of a land dragon palace that had violated the etiquette system. It was magnificent and almost comparable to the 3,000-year-old dragon palace of the Four Seas. It contained clusters of 10,000-year-old corals, which were rare in the world. This item could be said to be priceless. It was a natural treasure pavilion that could hang spiritual treasures and be refined into a sword frame. It had many magical uses that were unimaginable. Chapter 1126. The current capital of the Cloud Rock Nation was a brightly lit city that never slept. On the streets, the white-clothed youth flicked his sleeves up like two white clouds that had landed on the ground. He flicked his sleeves like fireflies. Passing by a brothel filled with the fragrance of cosmetics, there were orioles and swallows leaning against the railing upstairs, beckoning customers with their red sleeves. When they saw the handsome young man on the street, they either covered their faces with silk fans or looked at him with amorous eyes, lowering their voices. Pei Qian asked, "Are you bluffing and talking nonsense?" Cui Dongshan sighed and said, "When you're outside, treat people with sincerity. It must be the truth." Pei Qian did not believe the big, white goose's words. Chapter 1127. Heaven and earth were long, and the night light was faint. Green grass and trees were strange, and green mountains suddenly appeared at the bottom of the water. When Wei Shi and the short old Taoist appeared together, there were 4 empty chairs, and there were still 2 hosts who had yet to appear. It seemed that they still had to wait for someone. Previously, they were still talking about the 2 newly ascended 14th realm cultivators in the White Snow continent, and Wei Shi might be one of them. Unexpectedly, Wei Shi turned out to be one of the people behind the scenes in this ancestral hall. This made many of the members present feel reassured. After all, the situation was changing, and the cultivators had caught up with the good times. Both openly and secretly, there were more Dao confirming ascendants appearing one after another. If their ancestral hall didn't have a 14th realm cultivator overseeing it, it seemed a little lacking. The sword cultivator Du Shanin, who was participating in a meeting for the first time, felt that this trip was worthwhile. Chapter 1128. As soon as Zhou Zi said this, it was no different from a sudden clap of thunder. What a shocking opening. It was like a secluded mountain with no visitors in all seasons. Pine flowers fell all the way, clouds surrounded the doors and windows, and suddenly the sound of flute was heard. The members of the meeting were not fools. They knew that there was a difference between having 3 15th level cultivators and having only 1 15th level cultivator. Everyone could not help but sit up straight. Even Du Shanin, who had no stage fright and always looked lazy, began to hold his breath and listen attentively. They originally thought that after the 3 sects' founding masters dispersed, the key to the rise of heroes in the next 1,000 years was the ascension of immortals. They thought that they would go one step further than the old ascendants and reach the 14th level of immortal convergence. Chapter 1129. The fish scale ferry had been expanding to accommodate more large ferries like the Tongyin ferry, turning the temporary ferry port into a permanent one. It was said that the imperial court of the Cloudy Rock Kingdom had outsourced the production of vinegar, wine, and ink. Some daring youths from the capital fished at night. Not far away, there were colorful boats filled with the fragrance of cosmetics. The hosts were mostly dignitaries at the foot of the mountain, inviting the immortal masters to a banquet. They admired the moonlight, chatted about friendship, drank about gold and silver, and called each other brothers. Both parties had the surname Qian. The youths by the river whispered to each other, talking about which of the few colored boats that could be opened for business here belonged to which royal relatives and which official son was from which department. They occasionally saw a woman stumbling to the railing of the boat, taking out a handkerchief to wipe her mouth and tidying up her makeup. She hesitated and did not put the handkerchief into her sleeve. She threw it away and hurried back to the banquet. Now, everyone in the court knew that the owner of the Tongyin Ferry was an immortal abode with the word sect. Moreover, the court had imposed martial law that forbade outsiders from approaching the Tongyin Ferry and disturbing the sword immortal's cultivation. Therefore, the waters around the Tongyin Ferry were relatively quiet. Occasionally, a small boat would come close to this place. Very quickly, like a wild bird flying out of the reeds, the worshipping warrior would use his lightness kung fu, like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, reminding the small boat to quickly turn around and leave. The warrior was cursing in his heart. He turned around, lowered his head, and bent his waist. He took a deep breath and stepped on the water like a goose feather, as if he was walking on flat ground. He wanted to quietly go to the shore. On the way, he saw two people looking in his direction from the railing. One of them was a man in green with a warm expression. The martial artist was shocked and quickly stopped. He bowed and apologized to the two unfamiliar immortal masters on the boat. The man in the green robe smiled and cupped his fists in return. This stunned the martial artist who had been idling at the fish-scale ferry recently. He thought that the man's realm was not high, and his identity was ordinary. However, the martial artist was puzzled. How did he get to the Tongyin Ferry if his identity was ordinary? The borders of the entire capital of the Cloudy Rock Kingdom were loose on the outside, but tight on the inside. As the most important fish-scale ferry, some peers joked that even if a dog pooped on the side of the road and stepped on it, they would report it to the imperial court. Lu Meng smiled. Why didn't I recognize you? Chapter 1130. Lu Meng took the lead and left. Chen Pingon wished Pure Yang Jinren, who is known as the #1 Jindan, a smooth journey. Mountain Lord Chen also said something auspicious, hoping that the senior's Taoist heart was as round as the 15th moon. Feng Shuatao was puzzled. It was common knowledge that the moon was round and waning. Was it really a good saying? Cui Dongshan rolled his eyes and explained to Brother Feng telepathically that the moon on the 15th was round. Feng Shuatao was speechless. Mountain Lord Chen was indeed knowledgeable in this area. Chapter 1131. Peach blossoms were best seen on a boat, while the moon should be seen on the roof. This was Cui Dongshan's twisted logic. Feng Shuatao was like a piece of sticky candy. He could only follow the youth in white around. Feng Shuatao's patience and temper were not good. He had no way to deal with someone like Cui Dongshan. The key was that Cui Dongshan was an annoying chatterbox. He was not full of wine on the boat, but he was full of words. Cui Dongshan did not lie to Xiego. He did roughly check all the Qi refinement cultivators who had shown their credentials according to the list in the Ministry of Justice's files. Chapter 1132. The young man returned to the Tongyin Ferry. Seeing the girl in the mink hat squatting beside the ladder, Cui Dongshan asked with a smile, "Are you going to squat in the toilet or stop me?" Go Xia was too lazy to get up. He covered his mouth with his hand and asked, "Leader Cui, can you really show Qingmi a way to unite with the Tao? You didn't lie to him?" Cui Dongshan squatted down and sighed. "We treat people with sincerity. I said it was 50-50, but it was 50-50. I didn't lie." Cui Dongshan snorted and flung his sleeves. "I am a leader. My face is more precious than gold." Go Xia was skeptical. Cui Dongshan seemed to realize it later and said with a frightened look, "How did Go Xia know this secret? Could it be that fellow Taoist Qingmi and I saw that nobody was around, so we went to the corner of the alley and watered the plants? Could it be that they also saw us? I am a..." Chapter 1133. The white clouds were like an array, and the mountains were as deep as the sea. What was there for guests? A few cups of wine. Be it flowers blooming or birds flying, the wind and smoke cleared, and the people were all in the snow. Chen Ping'an came to Huang Shi and Xiaonyang's side. Behind him, there was a girl in a mink hat and a handsome cultivator with an unfamiliar face. They were dressed in green Taoist robes as they slowly walked down the Divine Path stairs. They quickly ascended the mountain and came to Chen Ping'an's side. Deng Jianren was clearly nervous. Huang Shi found it interesting. Weren't you usually quite impudent and witty when talking to your sister and brother-in-law? Now that you're mute, you're being unreasonable? Chen Ping'an did not speak, and Deng Jianren became even more uneasy. Huang Shi saw the awkward atmosphere and knew he could not side with an outsider. He teased, "Sword Immortal Chen, you speak our North Continent's language too well. I can't tell. You have a hint of the Aquarius Continent's language and Dali's official accent." Chapter 1134. In the dusk, there was a large patch of burning clouds. There was a river on the ground that meandered like a golden snake. 3 sword gleams dragged out long fireflies. Wherever they went, there was a thunder-like roar in the sea of clouds. Deng Jianying learned the 18 stops sword aura technique at a moderate speed. She was not fast because she was compared to the outstanding sword path geniuses at the Great Wall of Sword Aura. She was not slow because Chen Ping'an was at the bottom of the list. Chen Ping'an did not treat Xie Go as an outsider. She was a typical example of someone who could grasp the technique as soon as she heard it. She quickly practiced it a few times. Her sword aura circulated without any stagnation. In terms of talent in sword practice, Ning Yao and Xie Go were indeed unique among the geniuses. After Xie Go mastered the technique, he praised the foundation of the Great Wall of Sword Aura. This made Deng Jianying, who thought she had not really mastered the technique, feel pressured. She asked Chen Ping'an telepathically if her talent was not good enough. Chen Ping'an was speechless for a moment. Chapter 1135. It was a simple meal with home-brewed wine. During this time, Su Yuanxia used a long bamboo pole to pick a piece of salted meat hanging from the ceiling beam. She then went to the vegetable garden to pick some green peppers and specially made a plate of green pepper ham for Chen Ping'an. Chen Ping'an picked up some with his chopsticks and said it was a little salty. Su Yuanxia told him to scram. He squatted at the door and ate. At the table, the girl in the mink hat lowered her head and ate. She said vaguely, "Mountain Lord, Xiao Mo, I might need to make a trip back to the wilderness. I have some business to attend to, so I'll try to return early." Chen Ping'an looked at Xiao Mo without batting an eyelid. Xiao Mo was still playing finger-guessing with Su Yuanxia. He had rolled up his sleeves and was acting like brothers. This made Chen Ping'an furious. Apart from drinking and practicing the sword, what else can you do? You should know. You really don't know anything. Chapter 1136. Chen Ping'an said, "I saw the entirety of Jinsui City on the way here." Gukan smiled and said, "It's also rooted here, but it's better than our Liju Grotto heaven." Chen Ping'an nodded and said, "Mr. Zheng, you want more freedom?" Gukan said helplessly, "I just mentioned it casually." Chen Ping'an said, "Me too." Chapter 1137. Chen Ping'an raised his eyes and looked in the direction of the sea. Looking at the sea from the mountains, the blue waves connected to the blue sky. The scene was magnificent and breathtaking. In ancient times, there was an underwater dragon palace that was infinitely cool. It was said that the moon in the sea was as round as the wheel in the sky. Therefore, Taoism emphasized guarding the heart and nourishing the spirit. To only let go and not let go, travel thousands of miles to study and seek the Tao, and not be hindered by the mountains and rivers. Chen Ping'an collected his thoughts.
Gukan said, "It's fine.
Just wait. A few hours won't matter." Wasn't it up to the sect master to decide what to do with the sect celebration? Gukan liked the atmosphere of Luopa Mountain, but Fuyao sect would not copy Luopa Mountain. Chen Ping'an shook his head and said, "Since ancient times, there has been a reason to pay attention to the auspicious time. You should hold the ceremony on time and not delay." Chapter 1138. Sailing at Night on the Sea, Floating Duckweed and Floating Clouds. Chun Pingon flipped through his memories as if he was looking for historical records. He opened up some memories of the Summer Palace, but he quickly closed the book and looked down at Lingxi City, which was filled with Dao aura. Although Lingxi City was one of the 4 middle cities, it occupied a small area. However, there were palaces, pavilions, waterside pavilions, streets, and gardens in the city. The previous city master did not have much control over her own territory. She only needed to follow a few basic rules of sailing at night, and the natives of Lingxi City did not need to follow any additional rules. Lingxi City and Lingxi City both had the surname Li, but the culture and customs in the city were 2 extremes. The previous female city master disembarked from the ship, and she was accompanied by the silver man with antlers. The young man with antlers. When they were on the ship to Friao continent, Chun Pingon had already met some of the people in charge of the city. After all, they were in charge of Lingxi City, and this was part of the topic, so they could not avoid it. When they met, Chun Pingon felt that these literati, who were well-read and eloquent, were too elegant. On the other hand, they felt that the disciple of the sage of literature, who had the title of a hidden official, was too vulgar. Chapter 1139. Chun Pingon brought the first ancestor of the military school to the Heart World. At the same time, he greeted Yu Shiwu and explained the general situation. Yu Shiwu was very straightforward and agreed immediately, deciding to leave his fate to fate. The man smiled. Sword Immortal Chun, you're very sincere. Aren't you afraid that you'll lead a thief into your home and steal all the creation here? However, there are still 2 places where you set up illusions that can't see the light of day. Chun Pingon was silent. The man looked around. The illusory worlds were like fancy bird cages. He said disapprovingly, Qi practitioners these days have so many tricks up their sleeves. They like to spend their whole lives and give up the big for the small. They put the word Dao beside and only focus on the word's technique. No wonder they dare to call themselves Earth Immortals after forming their cores. Chun Pingon did not comment and only listened. Chapter 1140. At a roadside stall, there were 4 diners at a table. The old scholar had already taken out a pair of bamboo chopsticks from a bamboo tube and looked at them eagerly. When the steaming hot vermicelli casserole was brought to the table, he rolled up the chopsticks and blew on them a few times. He lowered his head and began to chew. The old scholar wolfed down the food and raised his head, asking in a muffled voice, "Monsieur, I'd like to ask you something. What kind of person is Jiang Shi?" Xiego thought for a moment and addressed him respectfully as Lord Wensheng. That guy's temper is sometimes good and sometimes bad. He has to be picky. If he met a Qi refinement cultivator on the road who had just started cultivating, he could also call him brother and sincerely see him as a fellow Taoist. However, if he doesn't like them, it's hard to say. He purposely speaks loudly and makes a lot of noise, making people think that he's a bore. The old scholar was enlightened. His personality is very similar to mine. If we chat later, we'll definitely hit it off. Chapter 1141. Zheng Juzhong and Lu Chun were both publicly acknowledged as people who had the potential to reach the 15th realm. It was just unknown whether the next time they met would be in the season of autumn or the warm weather of spring. Lu Chun was not stupid. He knew what Zheng Juzhong meant. Based on Zheng Juzhong's words, he knew that it was about time for him to return to the mortal world. He finally did not have to stare at Zheng Juzhong. Sect Master Lu was really flustered. When he returned to the Baek O Kyung building, he would definitely set off a string of firecrackers to celebrate. As for why Zheng Juzhong would fold a few pocket-sized colorful paper boats from time to time and place them in the river of time, Lu Chun could not be bothered to investigate. If he could not figure it out, then there was no need to think about it. Seeing that Zheng Juzhong had already stood up and was about to leave, Lu Chun suddenly spoke, intending to persuade him to stay. He raised his head and asked tentatively, "Brother Huaixian, it's a rare opportunity. Why don't we chat a little more?" You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.